You know that feeling when your heart is about to sink out of your chest, or that your brain is running a million miles an hour thinking about all the other possibilities that could have gone right, and all you're thinking about is all the ways that it went wrong, and that email from your boss that you just got that just is labeled urgent, and you have no idea, so you're dreading it and just hoping that it's going to go for the best, but really have no idea. That feeling like the world around you is in chaos and your life is in chaos and it's just going to crumble and there's nothing you can do because it's all out of your control, and all you want to do is just get up and run away and never look back. Whoa. The reality is that we've all experienced anxiety at some point or another, and it's downright impossible for us to actually avoid it. No matter how much we try to lock ourselves in that closet, in our safe place, and just avoid it, it always will come creeping back in, tapping us on the shoulder, asking us for some more fun. The reality is that it's not that much fun, and we've got to find out some other ways to deal with it and manage it. And there's some moments when anxiety is perfectly fine and normal and happy-go-lucky, and we just deal with it. We move on, and it's not a big deal. And there are other moments when it's not so much that easy. It's a little bit more complicated and requires a little bit more attention. So today we're going to figure out what that cycle of anxiety is and how we can maybe be more attuned to it. Imagine you're walking home from school. It's the same path that you've been walking every single day of your little education career. And as you're walking down this path, you have to pass through the woods. So you're like, oh yeah, I know what, I'm going to pass through the woods. No big deal. Like, I'm going to conquer these woods. I'm the king of this trail, right? And as you're walking through these woods, you are kind of just doing your own thing, kind of moving and grooving, just cruising along. You got your headphones on. You're listening to the jam of the day, just having a good old time. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, bam, there's a spider. Just kidding. It's not a spider. It's a snake. Bam, it's a snake. It's not just a small snake. It needs to be a little bit bigger than that. A bigger snake, yeah. A freaking huge snake, right? And what do you naturally do? You throw your hands up and you scream at the top of your lungs, maybe in the highest pitched voice that you've ever belted from those lungs, and you book it the heck out of there, and you don't look back. Okay, now hold on to that story for just a second. The anxiety cycle can oftentimes be comprised of three kind of distinct parts. The first part is fear, the second part is anxiety or anxiousness, and the third part is avoidance. Fear. Oh man, how we have all experienced fear before. Man, it's that feeling of like that in the moment emotional reaction to something that is like pretty intense, something that feels super threatening and like your life is in danger or incredibly stressful. Like when you're on a really high building and you're looking over the edge and you're just like, whoa, that is super far down, and I am like terrified that if I slip, I might tip over the edge and fall off. Fear is kind of like that Bogart in Harry Potter where it transforms and changes all the time. But the reality is that fear can take parts in so many different facets of our lives, and it's not just one thing we're afraid of. There's many of them. There's tons of them, tons and tons and tons of them, right? And so the reality is that the idea stays the same. So maybe it's not the snake, maybe it's something else. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of becoming my parents, fear of becoming an alcoholic, fear of going down the wrong path, fear of feeling like no one's gonna like me. The idea stays the same, and so you can just insert your fear here because we all got them. Part 2, anxiety. I guess we should put it this way. Whereas fear is the in-the-moment response, anxiety is typically a future-focused response to an emotional situation. Anxiety is that feeling when you are on high alert and you're scanning for all the other possible opportunities where you can spot those things that could potentially cause you to be fearful or go into that survival mechanism. You often in your head start to enter this space of kind of apprehension, kind of like wariness, like dread, kind of like maybe we should start to reevaluate our situations and life decisions here. But just like dread, that feeling of just that apprehension of like, oh, I really don't want to do that, right? I think about my laundry all day long. Like that thing, I just keep packing it down. All that laundry, packing it down. I'm sure my wife loves that, but I just keep pushing it down, and then eventually it just comes all spilling out, and I have to deal with it eventually. But we oftentimes even experience anxiousness in a lot of other things that we just simply care about, right? It could be that you're about to propose to a romantic partner, or you're getting ready for a big speech or a presentation, or you're feeling like you got this really cool art project that you just created. Oftentimes sharing those things and putting that out there to the world can be really anxiety provoking, because we feel like we have some really close connection to it, and we're worried and get overwhelmed by the potential possibility that people won't receive it the way that we anticipate it to be received. So all in all, I mean, anxiety is a natural part of life and something that we all experience on a day-to-day basis. But I like to think of anxiety as this one key piece, right? Anxiety is about the anticipation of an emotional event or response, and fear is the actual response. Avoidance. Okay, so avoidance is that action that we take to avoid a situation or an emotional response. And ultimately, what that avoidance behavior does is to remove ourselves from that stressful or fearful situation. Sounds pretty good, right? Sounds like the right thing to do. In an environment where you are threatened, you should probably leave. The problem that comes with avoidance is that it's not necessarily every moment that we're in that we feel anxious or fearful that it is a threatening situation. First thought, avoiding everything sounds pretty awesome, right? You get to avoid all the discomfort of life, the emotional roller coasters, the ups and downs, the ebbs and flows, and life just seems to go on. However, the challenge with avoiding something is it does only give us a temporary reprieve. In long term, it ends up having much more drastic consequences because we aren't able to cope with the ups and downs. Because no matter how far we try to run, that snake is going to still be there. As we mentioned with anxiety, we see that it brings ourselves to full attention to the things that we are fearful of, because we're on high alert, right? So if we're constantly scanning and being aware of those things that we're afraid of, it's going to be something that we're on the lookout for more often. So if we avoid those scenarios where we're trying to avoid every single time we run into a snake, then the encounters of running into a snake become more and more, because what if that snake is around that corner? What if it's over there? What if it's under that rock? What if it's in my backpack, right? And all of a sudden it's starting to filter into all different parts of our lives, right? And so the more that we try to avoid something, the more that it ends up coming back full circle, because we can't actually run away from it forever. And sometimes the scary, darker sides of the world is that we end up gravitating towards those things to just try to numb the anxiousness, because now we're feeling so anxious all the time that we just want to stop feeling anxious, right? Because we've been avoiding now almost everything in our lives, anything that can give us pain. And so we've created a scenario where we're just trying to numb it all, try to get away from it all. And ultimately what that does is it allows us to resort to substances or things that allow us to numb those pains, which can have even bigger consequences. It's wild how avoiding something can have such an opposite effect of what we intended for it to be, right? We think that we're doing ourselves a favor by avoiding it, but in the end, it actually ends up doing us more harm. We oftentimes want to rush into a solution and find that one thing that will just solve all of our problems and make it go away, and then everything will be better. The reality is it takes time, and oftentimes we're not aware of the things that we need to change in order to change them. Even though thoughts and feelings oftentimes come in and out of our brains and we feel like they're uncontrollable and just come out of nowhere, oftentimes they have quite a lot of rhythms and patterns that we can kind of track and be aware of. So here in this activity, we're going to kind of outline how we can kind of shape and understand those thoughts and feelings and anxieties we have as they pop up. Our activity or exercise, we're going to take a piece of paper and we're going to divide it up into 5 different columns. In our first column, we're going to have moments. So those moments where we experience anxiousness or anxiety. Then we're going to have those body feels. So what are you experiencing in your body at the moment when this situation is happening? Then we're going to write down our thoughts in the third column, those thoughts that are running through our head during that moment and those things we can recall we were thinking about when we were feeling anxious. Then we're going to look at what you feel like doing. So in those moments when you're like feeling anxious, what are those things that your body feels like doing? What do you want to do in those moments? And then in the last column, what did you actually do? Because sometimes what we feel like doing and what we actually want to do are kind of two very different things. Let's go ahead and look back at our example and reflect on moments, right? So with our example, we've encountered the largest snake on Earth. So that's what I put there. I put in moments, I'd say encountered largest snake on Earth. Then for my body feels, I may say something like I peed my pants because I was so terrified. I had an increased heart rate or was shortness of breath. Maybe the hair on the back of my neck was standing up. My hands were shaking, right? So for thoughts, it might have been like, holy crap, I'm going to die. Why is this happening to me? How could you be so dumb going that way? You're so stupid for thinking that was a good idea. Why can't you be more aware of your surroundings? You should have seen that before it got that close. Then, for what you feel like doing, you may say things like, I want to throw my hands up, scream at the top of my lungs, and run all the way back to school and wait there until I can get a ride home because and then maybe saying things like unable to go to the forest again because I'm afraid that the snake might be there, and running into it again. And what you actually might have done would be you threw your hands up in the air, you screamed at the top of your lungs, but maybe you went back to the nearest junction and were able to take an alternate path home where you knew the snake wasn't going to be. Or maybe that there may have been able to make a plan to go with a friend next time you're going on the trail. So that way, if you do encounter the snake, you have somebody there with you. Sweet. So as you can kind of see with this little exercise, you can kind of start to piece together some of those moments where you're starting to feel anxious and the thoughts and feelings and bodily sensations that are actually going through your head. But what it also does is it gives us a better idea of those patterns and themes, but also allows us to reflect on the things that we actually did well, because we oftentimes don't give ourselves enough credit for the things we actually are doing well in the way that we're coping and managing and dealing with some of these situations. So you may be surprised that you actually have some better mechanisms to handle these situations than you thought you did. So as you can see, anxiety is one of those things that we all experience at some point or another, and avoiding it, even though it gives us a temporary relief, doesn't always give us a great long-term solution, because it ends up coming back and biting us in the butt sometimes down the road. What we can do, though, is that we can take small steps, small actions that we can do every day to kind of be more aware and more conscious of the things that are kind of causing us to feel anxious, and ways in which we can start to make active choices towards bringing that to an awareness. So, thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. I hope that some of these things helped and you were able to kind of get some new insight. And please leave a comment down below and hit that subscribe button if you feel like this was helpful. And I will see you in the next one. Thanks.